So hopefully this one isn't as long as yesterday's. Sorry about the music in the background. The neighbor's having a fiesta or something, and it's raining a little bit too. But I wanted to talk about a few different things. I'll start off with talking about what it was like living with my stalker. So this was after I had broken up with my boyfriend, who was living with him and I, because I liked my boyfriend's best friend, which was a terrible thing to do, but I couldn't help it. And so I let him know. And then we broke up, and then we got back together. And then a few days later, I came home and everything was gone of his. So I just kind of assumed we were broken up. And then I was asking my stalker roommate, this was before he was like going crazy and stalking me. So I asked him, like, hey, see what he's gonna say about my ex-boyfriend. And then instead I found that they were talking about beating up the guy that I liked. So it was kind of a rough situation. I was like texting the guy that I liked and telling him to be careful, and everything that I would say, my stalker would talk about out loud and laugh like he had a clone of my phone because he knew all the messages I was sending. And then later on, he had seen something on TV that said that guy that I like's name with my name, like it was like a contestant on a show, two contestants actually. So he got upset and he broke the TV, he kicked it, and then there was like our living room light. He broke that, threw it up against the wall, and then he was like walking around out front while I was smoking, and he was just showing that he had a knife in his hand, and he was like pacing back and forth with it. And then like one day, well, for a while, he would just like sit there and scream at me and talk really down to me and say, oh, I heard from so and so that they said that you do this, or they said that you're a bad person because you've did this, and that they don't like you. And basically he had ruined all my friendships and relationships. One day he had chased me down the street, and I was like screaming and asking, running for help. And then my next door neighbor was like, yeah, did you hear that crazy lady screaming? And like I ran inside, and I had put the mattress in my room up against the door and put the dresser against the door so that he couldn't come in. But instead he was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And he was like trying to open the door, and then he got through the door, and I was like afraid he was gonna hit me, but he noticed that I was recording him on my laptop, so he ended up pouring Gatorade all over the laptop. But over time, like I was trying to get rid of him, but he didn't leave. And I thought he was watching me in the bathroom, because everywhere I'd go, I'd have strangers come up to me talking about what I was doing in the bathroom or in the shower, like specific things, and it was really creeping me out. And then so I one night decided, like, I'm gonna go rogue and I'm going to do something like really heinous that if someone saw that, like for sure he would tell everybody, or he would tell somebody. And I was hoping that somebody would understand that I was doing that as a cry for help. And what I did was I pretended that I was like touching myself to a family photo that I saw on Facebook, just assuming that he was watching my phone, like everything I was doing, and listening to it, listening to me and watching me through it. So I pretended to touch myself to the photo, and in that photo there was a kid, and I can't tell you whose it was because I can't remember. I just know that I was thinking about, I really was touching myself, but I was at the time thinking about how I would want to have a baby with the guy that I was in love with. That guy, my ex-boyfriend's best friend. and I know this is a terrible thing to talk about, but instead of that helping me, instead of someone coming up to me and saying, are you like giving out a cry for help? Because I know that's not in your character, which I didn't think about at the time when I hurt my friend in junior high. So I guess it really wasn't out of character. But I ended up just getting a phone call from CPS the next day. So I didn't talk to them. I freaked out and I just X'd out of the phone call when they were calling me. And then I assumed that, no one's going to come to help me. And instead, I thought, because my friend took me out to dinner and then showed me a picture of like cops at an apartment by his house, I kind of assumed he was trying to say the cops are watching me. So I was like scared and paranoid, which was not great because I have paranoid schizophrenia anyways. And it had gotten really bad around that time. But around that same time, I was thinking that, cops are watching me, and then my friends asked me if I wanted to help them drive home some cop cars that they had bought, some old cop cars for their car lot. And I had said no. They were like coming from Nevada. And I just said I don't want to do that. And then later that night, I was out front smoking with that gangster guy and some other neighbors by my car. And then I like walked over to a wall, and like 5 cop cars rushed up and like all pulled their guns out on me. And I was like freaking out. Like I thought it was my friends. I didn't really understand what was going on. I was like halfway drunk, halfway high. And I just freaked out and like kind of skirted off to my next door neighbor's house and sort of hid there for a little bit and just got really drunk. Let me think. So I don't know. I kind of assumed that actually later on there was a time when I was at so remember that gangster guy who had sexually assaulted me? Back when we were friends, I was at his house, or at his daughter's godfather's house, and they said, consider me your brother and your dad. And then they put a gun on the floor and pointed it in my direction, and I was like, what the heck? Okay. And I was like kind of scared that they were gonna shoot me or something. And then instead, like, they saw a rat run by in the room and they shot the rat. And I thought they were trying to say that like they're gonna shoot me if I rat them out because they were like growing weed. I thought the last thing I was talking about had more to do with that, but either way, so there was a time when I had sent dabs in the mail for the guy that I was in love with, the same guy as before, and I thought that it was possible that my stalker roommate and his cousin, who was like also in a gang, and the one who was dating the girl who ended up being a sex trafficker, I thought that they were trying to make me do that through like hiring the guy I liked to tell me to send it. So I had already sent it, and I had so much paranoia over it that I told on myself to the cops, and I said like, I'll take the fall for it, but I just think there's a chance that everything can be connected. And I like told on the other gangster guy, the one who was hired by my stalker, but this was back before that. I don't know. I'm just trying to say that there's a lot of things that were going on. Like at one point, there was a voodoo doll of myself that I found in my parents' house, in one of the rooms that had my hair on it, and it was specific because it had like a little bit of blue and blonde and brown in it, like my hair had at the time. And another story is the guy I liked, I ended up living with him at one point, and he and I got high on weed, and I was talking to him, and he said something about a drive-by, and I was scared that there was going to be a drive-by. So I was like, at one point I hid under a mattress because I thought there was going to be a drive-by, which reminds me of another story about a mattress, but I'll talk about that later. But all this had happened, and I thought that like something was wrong with me. I thought that I was like living in a simulation or living in hell. And so one night I ended up driving to my parents' house, and I told them, because of everything that had happened, that I thought I was dead and thought that I was living in hell. And I thought that what had happened was that my brother, who was a cop at the time, I thought he shot me because he thought that I was touching myself to one of his family pictures with the kids. And so I was talking to my parents, and I was like crying to them, crying on my mom's lap. And they're like, no, that didn't happen, you're okay. And then on the TV it was saying like, actually, this is the end of your life, and you need to come on this game show because we're gonna see after the world ends tonight who gets to continue on. And I was thinking like, okay, well, I want to be my mom's sister so that I can get to know her more. And then like as the night grew later, I had freaked out, and I was thinking this is going to be the end. So I drove in my car, and I was just sort of driving around and thinking, what am I going to do? It's going to be the end of the world. So I thought maybe I would unalive myself by driving my car into the river over this little cliff area by the house. And then instead I said, you know what, I'm going to go to church, and I'm going to confess my sins there, because if I'm going to die, I want to be able to confess my sins before I die. So I drove to church, and at church there was this big rock behind a fence with like a tree, and on the rock it said, love the Lord your God with all thy mind, all thy soul, all thy body, and all thy strength. So I ended up confessing my sins to God there, and I called my brothers and my sisters, and just I asked them for forgiveness, because I thought that that picture that I did that to in the bathroom back then, that I pretended to touch myself to, I thought it could have been them in the picture, and like I apologized just in case. And they all sort of forgave me and knew that it wasn't something I would do. And I was explaining to them like why I had to do it. And then I was freaking out, so I called the cops on myself and told them what I had done and told them to come get me, and they never did. And so I went on Snapchat and went on live, and I told everybody on Snapchat what I had done, and I said, I'll consider this the purge. You know, you guys can come and unalive me. I'll be sitting right here waiting for you guys to get here. And I climbed over the fence and was in this little area with the rock and with a tree, and I sat there up against the fence, like with my body against it, and I put my arms out, like kind of like how Jesus's arms were out when he was nailed to the cross. And I waited and I waited, and the night grew longer and nobody came. And I just sort of laid there on this little platform around the rock. And I told God, like, I'll be a sacrifice. I'll be, you know, the worst person in the world. I'll take that name because of what I'd done. And you can consider me like either the antichrist or like all evil. Like, I was at one point thought I was the antichrist, or wrote a poem about how my parents thought I was. And for a while there I had pretended to be him and tried to tell people that the antichrist is working for God just to get the end to come, but I was so wrong. So there at that rock right there, I kind of just said, I'll put everybody's sins on me, and I'll be considered, the evil one. And I just sat there in that fenced area, going in circles around and around and around that tree right there, because I couldn't get reception and I couldn't get out of the fenced area because it was like too high. And so I'm just walking around and around and around the tree. And finally, I was able to get service, and I called my dad and had him come down and pick me up. And him and my mom came down there. And I had told them what I had did. And they came, and my dad like put his back up to the fence and said, "Put your arms over my shoulders like this." And I did, and he just sort of lifted me up and out. It was almost like God had put me on his shoulders and flew me away from that. And then we were driving in the car on the way home, and I feel like I heard my dad say, "We're going to take you to heaven." So I was sitting there thinking, okay, good, I get to go to heaven now, because I was thinking that I was dead and in hell the whole time. And instead, I got like a notice on my phone, like a pop-up, and it was like a chapter of a book. That's what it looked like, and it had my name as the chapter. And I was thinking, oh, this must be God writing my name in the book of life. And then as I was like reading it, I was trying to read it, and we ended up driving up to the mental health hospital. And so I was confused, like, is this heaven? Like, I don't think this is heaven. So anyways, I went inside, and they were like checking me in or writing my name in there. And I'm sitting there on this little bench, and I'm like looking around, like trying to think, what am I gonna have to do to get in there, to get into heaven? And I like started stripping my clothes down. It was crazy. And I was like trying to think of like, what hand signal is it? Is it like a secret society that I need to try to get behind the doors? And I wrote on like my admissions paper that like my birth date was that day, that I was like saying that I was born that day. And I gave myself a new name, Natasha. And they took me in, and they're like, "Oh, look at this newborn, how sweet." And I went behind the walls and got locked up in a room. And I realized really soon that I was not in heaven, that if anything, I thought I was in hell again. And I was like outside one day when I was there. We're on like a yard break. They just had like a little tiny area with like a tree and like some benches. And I was just sitting there like looking around, and there's this girl just going in circles and in circles and in circles around the tree, and just laughing, looking at me. And I'm just like, what's going on? And I thought everybody there was like haunted, or like working for somebody, like trying to mess with me. I don't know. I thought that I was in hell again, and then eventually I came back to sanity, and they let me go after having a 5150. So that's my story of the day. Tomorrow I'll try to talk about that drive-by, the mattress thing, and the voodoo doll. There's kind of a longer story to that. So hope you guys enjoyed. A little bit shorter than yesterday, but not really. Sorry.